I'm trying to.
Hmm? Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Prim Perfect talk here at SL11B Community Celebration. This is the last of the Meet the Designer talks that we've been running all week, and we're going to finish off where we started, which is with a team of designers, great designers from the group Mesh Creative, which is a group dedicated to designing in mesh, but using high quality mesh and also original work that they have created completely themselves, or sometimes with a little help from a friend, but consensual help from a friend. So, this is a really great group for finding out how to design in mesh, how to work in mesh, finding out the tips and tricks. We have regular talks at Prim Perfect offices. And last month we had a show and tell, which was really fantastic. People pulling out the most amazing stuff. Uh, and it's always good. It's an excellent place to come and find out about mesh. We had a chat on Monday about some different issues. What I'd like to do today is open this up for people who may have questions about making mesh, and also maybe to talk a little about the implications of the new platform and how it's going to work keeping the current platform alive. So, does anyone here want to kick off with a question about creating mesh? An old favorite. How do you feel about Blender? Right, let's kick off with Kane at
Okay,
the
I'll,
left of the line.
yeah, I'll take that one because I am a Blender user. Um, I did struggle with the user interface when I first picked it up, but it has improved a lot, and it's also going to um, provide better texturing, better baking of textures in the next release. So I, to me, um, the price is right. Obviously, also it's free, right? But to me, my attitude always was the problem here is not going to be the tool. The problem is going to be me because I don't know what I'm doing. So to that end, I picked Blender and it said if and when I get to a point ever where Blender does not do what I want to do, I'll switch to Maya or Studio Max or whatever. But at this point, Blender does what I need to do and then some.
Oh, I was just saying I haven't used it since the new UI change, but when I was playing around with Blender, I was also playing around with Modo at the time, and I thought Modo's UI was a lot easier. So I honestly can't say anything from the modern perspective on Blender to be. So I'm sorry. I
Okay.
did use it a lot when I was doing sculpties because far and away the work that I believe was what's this Domino had the best sculpt scripts that I knew of at the time, and I wasn't using Maya at the time either. So
Can I just add real quickly that if you are doing clothing for SL at all, you seriously should be considering using Blender Avastar plugins to do the rigging for the clothing with. And for the fitted mesh also, they just come up with a new update that has the fitted mesh tools built into the process, and it really streamlines everything. And it's the only one that I could get to work for me out of trying Maya and Blender and Studio Max to do the rigging. And finally, Blender did it like instantly. It's very very well done.
A second question was about fitting mesh. Shai answered this one, I think. How do you feel about fitted mesh? And I guess, how does it affect you? Because most of you are furniture designers. I know, Max, you've done some clothing.
The only reason I haven't done more is because of fitted mesh. Because it's a serious pain in the butt and it's annoying to do. And at the time, I kind of had been waiting for some of the issues to get ironed out before I really dug into it and started to figure out how to do the collision bone rigging and all of that stuff. But I really haven't gotten back into it. Like I did the pants that I've got on in the regular rigged mesh in Blender Avastar, but I didn't do them as fitted mesh. And quite honestly, I still really feel like fitted mesh wasn't the right solution, but that's a whole nother can of worms.
I agree. I've played around with fitted mesh, and because I produce clothing, and that's my main sole focus, I don't feel like fitted mesh is the answer. I still need to produce several sizes, like small, medium, large, for fitted mesh, and or for production as an actual product. I'm not comfortable in releasing something like that yet for myself, for my store. So I'm stuck with standard sizing. And yes, we've seen the Carl mesh deformer, and we really, really wanted, we were rooting for it, but it never, it never came about in SL.
And it would have made life a lot easier.
Yes.
Laban has actually asked, Max, will you push for Carl's deformer on SL2? I think, I mean, I would hope that the reason that there was a mesh deformer at all was because mesh wasn't working properly. So my hope would be that in SL2, mesh will be working properly from the get-go, that they will, incorporate that design in. What do you guys think? Do I have it right, or am I not?
Well, I hope so. I mean, the whole reason that I don't really feel like the deformer or the current tool would really solve the problem and give us the kind of fitted clothing that we really want, like one size fits all type of thing, is because we quickly discovered that the geometry of the avatar and the rigging of the avatar and the skeleton and stuff were really where the problem was. So no matter what tool you put at it, unless they change the avatar, which they have shown that they're not really willing to do here, hopefully they'll do it in 2.0 and address that issue so that we can really get over that, because it's not even really that big of a deal in other video environments, like video games and stuff like that. It's just kind of taken for granted that if you put some clothing, outfit, or armor on in a game, it's going to fit you, and it should. It shouldn't be something that we have to fight over for 4 years. So hopefully we'll get that sorted out in the next version.
So we do, yeah. Well, in a way, it makes more sense because actually trying to refit it here would really, redesign the avatar here would really get people screaming with pain as all their old clothes fail to fit.
I think Abby has said that for SL2, they're going to redo the avatars, so that is probably going to break, and the same will apply to animations. So, and that in itself, I think, indicates that we have some major changes coming up in that space.
I was talking to Fraka and Colleen in a talk yesterday, and she said, Fraka was saying that the real pain of this is going to be her animations, that she has a fantastic number of animations. I can't remember quite how large it was, but it was certainly over 1,000 animations. And she's going to lose all of those, she fears.
That's what happens when you swap platforms.
Because
I mean, we can't have it all,
animation is based on SL skeleton.
Yeah,
SL skeleton
absolutely.
right now. So we can't just change it like that, and we have to do it from scratch. All of us, the creators.
Yeah.
I mean, the main thing that I really think that we need to take away from this idea of a new Second Life it pushes into everybody's radar the fact that we have to reconsider what we think about ownership in here.
Mm.
You know, it, you don't own any of this. None of us owns any of this. You feel like you do, and you kind of get used to the idea that, well, I paid for this land or this outfit, and I own it, and this is my avatar. I put so much into it. But the reality is that you're paying for the use of a little bit of time and some entertainment value on all of this stuff, and that's what it
Right.
comes down to.
And
I
that's the
mean,
same for content creators or for content consumers.
Mm.
So
Exactly.
it's not like if I upload it to SL, then I own, you know, that thing and I can do whatever. It's like I paid for the right to upload it to London Lab servers, and then I'll have to do something else and upload something else to the next platform.
I find it slightly I find it slightly amusing that a lot of people, okay, this is me being a little bitchy, but I find it amusing that people are howling that they won't be able to take their inventory, whereas they won't be able to go there at all for a couple of years. And most fashionistas are not going to be seen dead in something they bought 2 years ago anyway.
Well, here's a kind of an analogy. All right. Um, hmm. Ubisoft is a game company. All right. They make Assassin's Creed, and they make what's another IP that they have for Ubisoft?
Baldur's
Okay,
Gate?
Dishonored.
Okay.
Sure, anything. Now, if I've played Assassin's Creed for 3 years, bought every single expansion and whatnot, if I go to play Dishonored, do I expect my Altair or Ezio to be in Dishonored? I mean, it's a completely different platform produced by the same company. So just because people have bought stuff, just because I've uploaded money and paid for my content to be in here, I don't expect it to be on the next platform.
Very good point.
It's not
I
like
mean,
it's a mistake, and Ebby didn't call it. Well, I don't know. Did he call it SL2,
I don't think he
or
did.
did he say a new
no.
platform?
He said a new
Other people fed SL2,
Mm.
and it's not SL2. It's a whole different platform. And I've actually run across the same thing with people moving over to OpenSims, and because it looks like SL, they expect me to take all my content over to it, and I won't. It's another platform.
And so you make new content for that platform.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's easy to move it over to there, but
Our vast
it
virus
depends,
database
if
has
I
been
want to move that
updated.
content over there or not. And
I
I
mean,
know a lot
if
of people are dedicated to the things that they've bought in here. I've got great stuff that I've bought from other people here, but I don't expect it to be on the next platform either. I expect that there's going to be more cool stuff I can get, even if I am dedicated to the things that I've purchased years in the past.
the foundation level technology here, if we want to replace the core engine here and all of the foundation level technologies that built the way this works and fix all of the problems that we've been saying for years that it has, a lot of those really can't be fixed here with this the way it is. So if we want this, these things to be fixed and these problems to be addressed, it's going to have to be something from scratch. But unfortunately, in order to get that and have them hand it to us, we have to be willing to let go of all the stuff that we've got here for the most part. I mean, it certainly isn't going to be any harder on the residents here as customers that buy things than it is going to be on the creators. We're all going to have it tough in having to give up our inventories. Yes, we can take some of it with us, but quite honestly, most of it probably won't work well there, even if it does transfer over, and it's going to have to be reworked or whatever. And no matter what, we're going to have to build everything from scratch. It's all going to have to be rebuilt, everything. So, I mean, but that's really cool. Uh, take, as somebody who went over to Blue Mars for a year and a half and Cloud Party for almost 2 years, I can tell you, yeah, it sucks that they're gone, but it was really exciting to be at the beginning of something like that and be able to start from scratch. It wasn't the problem that we kind of see it as from this perspective. It really is a neat thing to be able to do and take part in. Imagine if you could go back to the beginning of SL, but have better technology and start that world all over again. It was a really neat thing to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I can speak from from experience talking to Max. It wasn't a direct one-to-one translation. You didn't just hop into Blue Mars and you could do everything. You had to learn a whole lot of brand new stuff, and uh, it's just part of the thing.
My sense is people are not panicking because there's going to be something new. They're panicking because they think SL is going to be shut down. And I still think the lab did a poor job of messaging this. They through the way they did it, they inspired a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Um, I actually had some people contact me shortly after the announcement, and they were all kind of in alarmist mode and saying this is
Mm,
going to all shut down and we're all going to die and the sky is falling.
mm,
And so what I did, I wrote up a little summary of what you know, I think we know now, and sent out to my group and asked for responses. And then the responses were all calm and reasonable and mostly positive, saying, this is going to be a good thing because, you know, if you give people the facts, they tend not to oppose this.
mm.
But if it's incomplete and poorly managed messaging, they do freak out. So I'm excited about this, but I think a lot of heat could have been avoided if they had given a little bit more thought to how to present the news.
One of the things that I think is quite important, and I'm glad to see that Inara Pay picked it up on her blog today, is that before they started talking about the platform, the new platform, um, Ebby actually spent quite a long time talking about the issue of user retention and ways that they're working on retaining um, users in Second Life. Lower land tier was not mentioned, I'm afraid, but there were ideas like ways of tying in content creators, people who create content, with the retention process, which is something that I've been urging for a while, and also reviving the idea of the community gateways, continuing to test what is working best for the new user experience. It was all very positive and hopeful stuff, as was the way that Ebby and Pete Linden a day before met with a new grouping of Second Life mentors and volunteers. And it's all, this is not the actions of people who are preparing to close something down. I think it's it's all being developed.
Yeah, I sat and I watched the entire video
Mm,
of the TPV meeting where all this came out, and I didn't come away from watching that with any kind of trepidation at all as to the current Second Life platform. Um, I think a lot of that came from people who did watch it and then had some knee-jerk reactions, and then other people, just kind of spilled over that way without the full facts coming out. But if you watch it, he addresses almost every single kind of issue, and none of it involves Second Life closing. Period.
mm,
I have to give Ebby props for sticking his neck on the chopping block and actually going out onto the SL Universe forums, which can, as anybody who's been there knows, can be a bit of a bloodbath at times. They'll chew you up and spit you out
mm,
if you're not careful there. And that's good. We need places like that. And but it was really cool because he actually showed up and directly answered questions from people right in the forums,
Mm,
and that's not something you ever would have seen M or Rodvik or Philip do
mm,
outside of an official SL forum.
mm. Well, not even
I
that,
think that's
really.
really cool.
I,
Yeah, not even there
notoriously,
exactly.
notoriously, for the last 3 or so years, it's been completely locked down.
And that's one of the things I think that's my biggest concern in all of this. I mean, I think it's fantastic news. It's long overdue, and it's really the only way to keep this around for another decade. I think is if we update the technologies.
Mm,
But the biggest problem, the gorilla in the room that we all need to really think about, I think too, is that this is still Linden Lab that's going to be running this, and
yes.
they have their good points and they have some really bad points, and that worries me more than anything. This is the same company that hasn't really done any marketing for the last several years, has burnt the bridge of customer service to the ground several times. I mean, it just that's not a good. If these are going to be the people that are running the new grid,
Mm,
what does that bode for us? Is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing? Their decision making process as a corporation doesn't seem to be extremely valid in the overall day-to-day operation of things. When you look at some of the decisions they've made in implementing things like mesh and material maps and you know experience tools and things like that in the past, they've been kind of fumbled pretty badly in a number of choices.
I think we've also got to look at the fact that they've made all these choices. They're the first people. They're kind of the pioneers still. So you can say that other video games use mesh as a matter of course, but you know they had to introduce mesh in a way that users could use it, and they've had to do a lot of the kind of thinking this thing through and out. And it's one of the things I always think about Second Life, that it's so massively complicated that if you nudge one part, if you if you tread on a butterfly in one sim, a building will crash to the ground on the other side. In other words, you might say, okay, we'll fix this problem, and you fix this problem in the code, and then you get about 300 people screaming, why did you fix that? My business totally depends on being able to do that. So I can really see the temptation of a new platform for them. But they've been doing this for the first time, and it's hideously complex. And people say things like they don't understand how we use the grid. I don't think anyone could understand the whole way that we use the grid because it's just so complicated.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I also have to say there's something to be said for spending a few thousand hours in here. It gives you a better understanding of what's going on and how the changes that they make affect you.
Yes.
And I think any
Yes.
virtual company that's building something like this is never going to succeed unless they have that level of innate understanding of not just the inner workings behind it and the code that runs it and all that, but what it feels like to have somebody control your life as a benevolent dictator that way. Suddenly things change and you have no control over it, and it could throw you for a total loop if you've got a business here that depends on this. I mean, that kind of stuff really can get costly, and it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Having the developers spend a lot of time in the world, I believe, is really, really fundamental. Again, if I kick back to a game analogy, it's like back when I was deep into WoW, it was really cool that you knew that developers that worked on things like World of Warcraft had their own guilds and their families played, and they intricately understood the aspect of being inside their world and dealing with the problems that were there and could try to fix them, or they'd introduce something and find out through playing that it completely did not work. They didn't find out through a bunch of people bitching on a forum. Pardon my French. I think having the people in world is a good step again. Also, and I think I've said this to Max, but I don't know how far to take it. Is that these different decisions have been made by different quote unquote regimes. Different leaders in charge have made different decisions, and cumulatively, it's been pretty bad. But you can only hope that this time maybe there's some good coming out of it.
There's been an awful lot of conversation in chat, which hopefully we can capture and put out at the same time as this video goes out, because this talk is being videoed and you'll be able to see it, and we'll try and capture the chat so that that can go out in parallel, so that there'll be a forum to register your we'll be looking to register your comments.
One of the more interesting comments, I think, or questions to come out of this discussion on a larger scale outside of here is, the comments were made by Ebby that, they really want to make this larger. And it kind of can't get any larger here because of the way the technology is built, the concurrency levels. But that brings up the question, if they really want to make this many times larger than SL, that means that they're really going to have to focus a lot on getting new users in here and keeping them in here. And the question arises, is the new and better SL going to be aimed at, keeping all of us content with the way things are and providing all of us with what we want out of a new world, or is it going to be aimed at, this ever elusive, massive Facebook database of users that everybody seems to think is just waiting for virtual reality to come knocking? And who are they going to be chasing after? Are they going to try and make this for us, or are they going to make it for some people that aren't here yet? And you have to wonder about that.
And are they going? Sorry, go on, Kane.
I think Ebby knows that he has to go after both. And he has said, but he knows that if you don't get the creators across, then there's not going to be anything in that world. It's going to be flat sand and water. But at the same time, obviously they want to scale this by at least one order of magnitude. And that, I think, the one thing they can do and have to do is to make sure that that first hour experience is much better than it is today. My favorite example is, put on a pair of shoes in Second Life. It's not easy. What's a foot shaper? Why do I need alphas on my feet? Do I wear? Do I add? It should be one click. Put on my shoes. So that, and also finding places to go and use is too hard right now. So I think Ebbing gets all of this. I think he gets a lot of things, and I'm very happy he has taken the helm at Linden Lab.
Yeah, I just want to point out that where we are right now is the workings of all the creators who adjusted to whatever SL was in the beginning. In 2003, 2005, there was nothing then, and the reason why we put on a certain pair of clothes was because some creator decided this was it, and it became standard, and then we moved on. And then for system to be all the different layers and the alphas, it's all because one creator said this was the best way to do it, and everyone adapted. So I think that's why SL was so special for everyone.
I think it's pretty safe to say, in response to something somebody in the audience just typed a minute ago about, the high-end level designers being the only one that are catering to. I think we're definitely going to have a much stronger set of in-world building tools. And I would be willing to bet, my money is that they're going to be some kind of a voxel or a variation of a voxel engine inside here, where we could, or inside there rather, that we can do something like prims, but much more advanced than that. Um, I mean, even here we can export prims as mesh objects, but voxels do that a lot better, and the data sets that you start and end with are a lot cleaner. Um, Much more versatile tool, particularly some of the more advanced voxel engines like Voxel Farm. If you look that up on YouTube, is amazing what this one guy is making with that. I think that's probably going to be what we end up with in world, to be honest with you.
I mean, Ebby did actually mention in this very early alpha level chat that he was very keen to make sure that in-world creators were able to create again. The sort of, making sure that people had the opportunity to be creative in the new environment, that it wasn't just going to be a case of importing stuff. And that would be very
Or
cool.
just the advanced designers.
Yeah.
It's important that everybody has access to those creative tools. That's what made SL famous, I think, to begin with.
Yeah.
Made it work. I mean,
Absolutely.
anybody could come in here and relatively easily start building some stuff. And
Right.
out of that, invariably, you're going to have a group of individuals that sort of excel at it and take it even further. And that's the way this has gone. But it has to be there.
I agree. I agree, Max, entirely.
Yeah, because that way people can learn to create and go on and rise up and become the designers of tomorrow, which may take years. They may become the great designers, but it takes them a long time to progress along that path.
Yeah.
But it's
The
the
interesting
same in
thing about
SNRL. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
the interesting thing about where the voxel tools are at this particular point in time, even in like in Cloud Party, the tools were getting pretty advanced, and now with like this voxel farm and block space, which are two building environments that you can create stuff in with voxels, they're very organic shapes that you can create and actually like smooth the corners down and create arches and different angles and things that connect the voxels. It's almost to the point now where the technology is close to rivaling mesh. Now you have much more finite control when you're building with a 3D application like Maya or something, but certainly for doing, pretty much everything that you would want to do in mesh, it can be done with the latest voxel engines and done pretty well. It's when you get down to the small detail and finite control that you lose that ability, but I think it's just a matter of time.
What about the rest of you? What do you think? Or
I think it's likely that Max is right. I think voxels are going to be the new prim, so to speak. Um, because again, Abby has said that he realizes that the key to this whole environment is to give that creation power to everyone, not just people with Maya and Blender. So the only technology that I know of that's kind of on the horizon that could fill that role and be better than prims is voxels. And it makes a lot of sense for things in addition to creation. It makes a lot of sense for landscaping and building the backbone of the framework of the world as well. So yeah, I think that's where it's headed, and we'll see how well they do it. But I would
It's
put
much
money on
more
that.
efficient than polygon rendering as well. So you end up with the ability to show a lot more detail and a lot more information to the user in that environment and scale it up and down as you get closer and further away from things. So you can have, massive amounts of detail in an environment that you really just can't get here very efficiently.
so you think that Prim Perfect may need to become Voxel Vogue?
I think that's outstanding.
So have other have people got questions again for the panel? We've had chat, but I'm wondering if anyone wants to. that's a very interesting point from Mav, that the whole key here is trust. We trust fairly well they can create a good new platform. We're worried about how they will manage it and if we can trust them on that.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't trust they can make a good platform, but the ability's there, I believe.
Mm. And they're
I have no
hard
doubt that they're
to.
going to build a wonderful platform. I think the technology is plentiful out there to make a really much more detailed and much better running version of this. How they choose to run that and how they choose to make the choices that make that world are what concerns me more than anything. I do like the idea that the land is going to be cheaper and that there will be a sales tax instead. That's a much better way to run a world like this.
Of course,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're actually paying a sales tax now, aren't you, if you sell in the marketplace?
Yeah, you have a 5% sales tax.
But you don't
But I
have a
mean, like an
sales
average
tax
transaction tax.
Mm.
in rural.
Right, yeah.
And I agreed it's a much better model, because then how much you paid the lab would depend on how your own sales, your own revenue, and that's a much more attractive model than paying $2.95 a month, even though you sell nothing.
Right, yeah. It would actually encourage people to, progress and get better because then that equals more sales and
Exactly.
I think what was it that Cloud Party was going to do with their marketplace before they folded? It was you had like so many listings you could do for free, and then above that you had to start paying for additional
Right.
listings. That was interesting. Even
Mhm.
from a person who has a crap load of stuff on the marketplace, I think that's pretty good. And I think that would help also to weed out a lot of crap. And then as a content creator, um, I have to sit down and judge if the sales I'm getting on this certain item justify its being listed.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair, and that also would give the lab more money for more listings as well.
I mean,
And
the biggest impact that I think it's going to have, though, is you know, it spreads the costs from being high for very few to being almost unnoticeable for everybody. And if you want a piece of land in here, it makes it much more accessible and it makes it a heck of a lot easier to keep it and maintain that. So you don't see so many, well, I can't afford to keep my sim open. I've got to close it because I got to buy groceries this month. That shouldn't be a question anybody has to ask in order to
Mm.
stay here, especially with the amount of work that they put into this place. And it's really hard to keep that up.
Mm. It's there are some things that are going to be really quite tough. There are creators out there who do give things away for free, which are quality things. We did the Designing World show on Ali last week, and her stuff is just gorgeous, and she gives it all away for free. I know this is a shocking thing to say in Present Company, but there are creators like that who are quality and free. And there's also ranges that are of necessity free. And I say this feelingly because Prim Perfect is. If I had to start charging in order to cover a sales tax on the marketplace, then people wouldn't bother to buy Prim Perfect. They would just go and read the blogs. Or else I'd have to increase my advertising revenue quite heavily in order to
Well,
cover the sales tax.
I mean, it takes money out of the equation a little bit.
Mm.
And it makes it so that the sole focus of creating here doesn't have to be about making a buck.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's something that you really get pressured to fall into the marketplace here as opposed to just being able to focus on creativity and making stuff that's fun and giving that away. And I wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily be against the idea of not selling it all in here if I didn't have to pay $300 a month for my land. But
Absolutely.
that's not the way economics work in here. But economics is the primary factor I have to consider. And I think that sucks. I'd much rather be able to come in here and go, what do I want to make today? I'll make whatever I want. And it's going to be fun.
Mm.
Yeah.
As much as we all love places that make like hair and shoes and that, feel a certain amount of compassion for the designer that has to come in here every day and make yet another pair of shoes, the 400th pair of shoes that they've made in SL, and try and make that new and different and better and enjoyable by the customer that's going to come in to buy that 400th pair that they made.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
That's kind of like anybody. It's like yet
the
another
money is
house,
awesome,
yet
but
another
it really
house.
can be crazy trying to do that. Well, they're not all laughing all the way to the bank. Some of them are, but there's a lot of people in here that work their ass off and make next to nothing.
Yeah.
And more of them than the people that are banking the long cash in here. This isn't 2007 anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah. And if people are laughing all the way to the bank, they've probably earned it. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the content that comes in here isn't, pulled out of thin air.
Yes. They had to learn it.
Although some of it is pulled from Turbo Squid.
Yes. Yes, it is. and that's a whole other frustrating conversation right there.
Let's have a little bit of that frustrating conversation. What is it like? I mean, how frustrating is it? And I'm sure this is on a scale of 1 to 10. We're already into the teens. How frustrating is it to feel that you're up against people who cheat? And how
Well-
big a problem is it?
Well, look at it this way. Um, if I sit and I know Shy for sure does, you sit for a week, you sit for 2 weeks, sweating, planning, designing, modeling, texturing, uploading, fitting, rigging, and you work your ass off. And then somebody just grabs something off Pepper Squid, pulls something down off a torrent site, uploads it, doesn't bother doing half the textures, but they can put out a full product in a day with zero work and make money. Where you had to bust your ass, learn for years in order to put out something that you consider good. And yeah.
You didn't even pay for the software. I mean, you
Yeah.
paid for the software that got you where you are. You know? It's not just...
Surviving as a business owner in a virtual world is a long game. It's not a
Yes.
short term, it's not a medium term, it's a long game because you got to deal with a lot of things like that. And the only way you can address that problem is by recognizing the fact that I'm going to be able to wake up tomorrow and make something new. If that person wants to do the same thing that they're doing in order to stay in business, they got to find somewhere else to steal that shit from.
Yeah.
And I know I can come in here and make something new and it's going to work for me. And it may not
that's the
sell
only
as
thing.
many things or whatever, but that's the way it is.
That's
I think
the only thing
over
that makes me
time
laugh.
this kind of solves itself because people recognize that this is just one more variation of the same exact same model, and you don't really want to buy something that is just a copy of a copy of a copy. So, as the consumers get more savvy about this, I think that the problem is not going to be that huge in the long run, at least.
Yeah, it doesn't matter for I think some consumers, but like Max said though, I mean, well one of the reasons I can sit and be frustrated but still laugh at these people is like he says, I can sit down and create something brand new, and it's in my style, and it's consistent with everything else that I produce, and they probably can't.
Right.
And that's the key. I mean, how freaking awful would it be to have to come in here every day knowing that you can't make the things that you're selling and be the guy or the girl that has to steal in order to keep their business going, or that chooses to do that in order to keep their business going? What a hellish way to exist in here. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
So, how, I mean, one of the things is that people have been saying that because the new platform is coming along, they're going to stop buying things. How can we kind of keep the economy going? What's going to be the best ways of keeping people buying your stuff until the new platform is viable, despite the fact there may be like little panics and so forth?
I think all we have to do is wait 1 week. People will forget that they were going to panic and not ever buy anything ever again. By the way, Safia, kudos for the interview with Jessica Lyon. That
Oh,
was great, and I think she or both of you really nailed the whole issue of with some really good examples. Why would you not enjoy yourself now because of what may or may not happen in 4 years' time? That's just, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I think this is going to blow over, and people are going to go to a store again and say, "Ooh, that jacket I must have," and they will buy it regardless of the fact that they know that they might not be able to transfer it in 4 or 5 years to SL2.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like knee-jerk reaction. I don't think it's any of it's founded in reality.
mm,
People would be afraid. Oh yeah, well sure, there's no reason for me to buy anything. But like you said, they'll run into something the next day and be like, oh, that's cool.
But the reaction is a
Attention
reality. I
deficit
mean,
disorder.
shiny.
I've already had several IMs from past customers of mine that literally said, "So since SL is going to close now, can I take your X item that you made that I bought from you 3 years ago and take it over to the OS grid because I'm getting out of here?" And how do I respond to that? I mean,
I think a simple
I
no.
well, I mean that, but more importantly to me is addressing this person's unreasonable certainty that SL is closing and that the sky is falling, 3 days after somebody said that in a private forum that got leaked out by the CEO that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what, you know,
Mm.
my opinion tends to be if this is what certain people are going to react like and they're going to clear up and move out, then maybe that's kind of thinning the herd for the massive good. Let's let those people that are going to actually think that SL is going to close over this go out of here so that we can sort of clean up the gene pool a little bit.
It's only the serious people left. Yes.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, even if uh, a significant number of established content creators that exist in SL, even if they all moved over to a different platform, somebody would fill the spot.
Mm.
Yeah.
There would be somebody else who isn't wanting to go over to the new platform that would take that place, and there would still be content coming out. Or maybe somebody whose favorite creator did leave were like, you know what, maybe I can actually make that
Mm.
and
Yeah.
start something completely new. I mean, that's how that's how we all came in. It was like, oh, I think I can make that.
Mm.
You know?
That makes
Content is
sense.
such a king here in terms of dominating so much of what goes on. I mean, certainly it's not everything, and from a designer's perspective, it seems more a part of the picture than it would be for an average resident here.
Mm.
But it comes down to sort of the limitations of the platform to begin with. I mean, this is a great place to build stuff, but beyond that level of production and consumerism, what goes on here? Well, there's socializing, and there are certain types of games that people can play, and there's the breedables things, and events and live music and so on, there are little pockets of interesting stuff happening. But on a much larger scale, that still really isn't something that happened here. Content still dominates at that base level.
Well, you
And I think
think
we need more gaming and so on, more things to do outside of just content here.
you think so, but there are whole rafts of Second Life that are going on at the same time that maybe we don't come across as much. For example, there's the whole non-profit network. And I'm not just talking about people who are fundraising here, but there are whole sims dedicated to things like cystic fibrosis that are for support and information giving. And so that you've got people who come in here and who may not actually buy that much, or may have a life here with a house and things, but who spend a lot of time at their particular support group and get a lot of support here for their illness, for their condition, for their cause. And then you've always got, and then you've got the educational people. And backing that up, you've got people who are undertaking a kind of extended education here that aren't necessarily associated with universities or schools or whatever. But the libraries, there's a library network that runs right through Second Life, with people getting together for reading groups. Maybe people, all of this stuff is kind of here too, and it's kind of the communities that will need to transition, as well as the content creators.
But who says that those communities need to move over to the new
Maybe
platform?
they don't.
I mean, they're extremely situated here right now.
Mm.
This is a platform that works. What
But
makes
it
people
doesn't
think
work
they
though.
have to move? Well, but it does. They're here. They're here and they're
But
established.
but let's be realistic about it. On many of them, it does work, but in just as many, if you put 30 of the people in that group that try and get together and have a book discussion, it often is, unresed for half of them, or it's laggy for the other half, or voice doesn't work, or they can't cross the sim, or the sim crashes, or a bunch of them crash in the sim, and it's more frustrating more often than not to try and have
But
some kind of an event like that.
but that'll be their decision if they want. If they have problems with concurrency and the new platform works out well, they'll move to the new platform. If they have something established here and it works out well for them, they can stay here. I mean, nobody's forcing anybody to move to the new platform. They could start the new platform and nobody move. It's unrealistic, but it could happen.
Well, I would think that must be their big nightmare. Second Life is currently the only virtual world platform of this type that has succeeded on a large scale. The only ones that have partially succeeded and keep running are things that are very closely modeled on Second Life, like InWorlds.
Yeah.
So they must look at what they're doing and think, am I building the new Second Life, or am I building the new Cloud Party? Am I building the new Blue Mars?
Well, I'm still pretty firm in the idea that one of the reasons why the Blue Mars didn't work out, the Cloud Party, we don't know if it would have worked out in the end or not. It wasn't exactly promising. Is I think it's the people here in Second Life. It's the dedicated residents of Second Life that make it work. I think that is the secret sauce.
Right, well, we have kind of done our full hour. We've actually overrun by half an hour. And we can probably keep going for a bit longer if we want to. Can I ask if the audience have any more questions?
Zindra.
Sorry.
So is the sky falling? I'm seeing it as remarkably high today.
It's hype.
The hype is falling.
The hype is falling, but the sky is well up there. Okay.
I don't know if I could learn C sharp either. It took me long enough to learn LSL, but I'll try.
So yes, Mav was saying about scripting changes. Yeah, I think it's going to. It probably looks like C++ or C sharp.
Maybe some JavaScript thrown in there.
Oh,
Please, no
the horror.
JavaScripts. I
The
hate
horror.
I
You know,
told Try about a week ago. If it's not going to be LSL, but whatever it is, I'm probably not going to know it, and I'm going to have to sit down and learn it, and hope that there's some documentation.
Python.
I really like the idea of them building this in a browser, as a browser-based platform, simply because of the connectivity issues and the ease of use and being able to get people in here on a much larger scale. That works infinitely better than a proprietary client. I mean, I can see the value of a client. It would probably be better in the long term to do a client, but accessibility, I think the browser would be key for that. I mean, Cloud Party really had it right in that respect. You know, almost infinite scalability, you know, easily updatable at even the core level of the program, and just, you know, ready to go into the future and keep modifying. It was a good way to go.
Yeah, there were some platform incompatibilities, though, wasn't there? Like you couldn't use on iPads and stuff like that.
Yeah, but who cares about those people anyways, really? Mac users.
Max.
Nobody uses
Yes.
those.
Nobody has iPads. Oh.
Okay.
No, the Cloud Party team was bought by. I'm sorry, I'm
Yahoo.
answering. Cloud Party team was bought by Yahoo, I think.
Yahoo. Yes.
And
Yes.
and they kind of shut down the entire project. If Yahoo decides to launch something Cloud Party-esque, that'll be something else, I'm sure. The Cloud Party.
See, the team that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that was it.
The team at Cloud Party, the group of 5 people or whatever that was doing it, actually worked together at a company, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, and I can't. But they did Star Trek Online and a couple of other big MMOs, and they basically the capitalists that started the VC guys that started Cloud Party basically hired the whole team from that gaming company and brought them in. And Yahoo then bought the whole shebang and basically kept the team and is throwing the code away for the most part. They're probably never going to do anything with it. I can't see it happening, but they'll probably use those guys for, you know, that team for something else.
It seems like those are a very popular, hot team to hire.
Well, I mean, it started out with 4 of them for a while, and just the 4 of them with one person managing as CEO kind of created a world which wasn't SL certainly, but was, you know, well ahead of SL in a lot of different respects. And they created that in a year and a half, just the 4 of them. So they are a pretty hot team.
Yeah, and they were also really good with, you know, addressing issues that people had, up to the point where they completely rewrote their avatar system. And that was the cool thing, is that they could do that really early on. And they were really involved with the small community that they had, and you had some really dedicated people there too, as quote unquote residents, I suppose, that were helping out, trying to drive, you know, trying to drive word of mouth and stuff, and helping people out when they came out, kind of like the mentor system and stuff. But who knows what they'll come up with next?
I guess better the devil you know. You know, they have managed to make this work for 11 years, thanks in no part to our large financial contributions. But you know, they did make it work. It's still
Yeah,
there.
as much as people will say, like, you know, I spent so much, you know, this X amount of money at your store, you can say, well, I pretty much spent like, you know, 20 times that just bringing content in.
Yeah, and paying for tier.
Yeah, paying for tier for years, and paying for programs, and paying for instruction, and just time in general.
Yeah.
It's not just content consumers that can feel like they might get ripped off.
Yeah. But I always
I
say
really hope that.
that
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
you're only as good as your last work, and every time you make work, you make better for yourself. So that's where I am on the new platform. I think we're going to be a better version of who we are right now, creating with Prims, creating with Mesh, whoever we are. It's going to be
Oh, get to
an
be the avatar I always knew I could be.
yes.
Sounds like a new marketing slogan.
Well, I'm going to wrap this talk up now. Thank you very much to Chris Lehman, where it's now 6:30 in the morning for him. Maxwell Graph, where it's very easy, it's 3:30 in the morning for him. Shy, where it's also 6:30 a.m. in the morning, and Kane Maven, where it is also 3:30 in the afternoon. Thank you, all of you, for coming to this talk today.